When I think back to that day, I can still hear the clock ticking in my parents' living room. It was slow, heavy, like the sound of time itself, reminding me of everything I'd forgotten. That was the day my parents realized we'd all moved on. And I wish I could tell you it happened suddenly, like a fight or a goodbye. But no, it was quieter than that. It was the kind of realization that comes in silence, the kind that sinks into old walls and empty chairs. I didn't notice it right away. I thought I was doing fine, visiting when I could, calling when I remembered, sending gifts on birthdays. But love doesn't live in things you send. It lives in the moments you share. That day, I came home for the first time in almost a year. My parents' house looked smaller. The paint was peeling near the porch. The garden, my mother's favorite, had turned dry and brown. And when I stepped inside, it was so quiet that my own footsteps startled me. My father was sitting at the table, slowly turning a cup in his hands. He looked up and smiled, but it was a tired smile, the kind that says, "I'm happy you're here. But I didn't expect you to come." My mother came from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an old towel. She said, "Oh, look who's here." "It's our big city boy." Her voice trembled just a little, but she still smiled. I hugged her and she felt lighter than I remembered. Smaller. It should have made me pause. It should have made me stay, but I didn't. I thought they were fine. I thought they'd always be fine. And that's the dangerous thing about love. We assume it can wait. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone. Our house sat on a quiet street, lined with mango trees and dusty fences. It wasn't much, but to me, it was the whole world. My parents weren't rich, but they gave everything they had, not in money, but in care. My father worked long hours at a small repair shop. He fixed bicycles, radios, and sometimes even people's hearts with his calm patience. My mother stayed home, always moving, cooking, cleaning, tending the garden, humming songs from the old days. She'd always say, "Love doesn't need big words. It needs time." I used to roll my eyes at that. I was young, always in a hurry to grow up, to see the world beyond our small town. When I left for college, I promised them I'd come back often. And at first I did. Every semester break, every holiday, I'd take the old bus home and my father would be waiting at the station with that proud smile, waving like I'd returned from war. My mother would have my favorite soup ready before I even dropped my bag. The house would feel alive again. Laughter, smells of food, late night talks that drifted into dawn. But as years passed, life got louder. Work, friends, city lights. One visit missed turned into two. Phone calls became shorter, then fewer. When I did visit, it felt different. They'd ask questions about my life, and I'd answer politely, checking my phone between sentences. I told myself they understood, that they knew I was busy, that I was building a future. But sometimes, when the conversation paused, I'd notice my father just looking at me, not judging, just looking like he was memorizing me for later. One Sunday, I called home while walking to a meeting. My mother answered, breathless with joy. "Oh, you remembered to call today," she said, laughing softly. And I said, "Of course, Ma." I always remember, but it was a lie. I'd only called because I was early for work. She told me about the neighbor's new baby, about how Dad had hurt his back fixing a fence, and about how quiet the house had been lately. I said, "You should go out more. Don't just sit at home all day." She chuckled and said, "We don't have anywhere to go, son. Our world is right here." That line stayed with me, but I pushed it aside, thinking they were fine. Then when I got married, things shifted again. My wife was kind, but she didn't grow up like I did. City-born, always on the move, not used to small-town silence or the way my parents spoke with long pauses and old-fashioned manners. When we visited, she'd stay polite but distant. and my parents, not wanting to intrude, spoke less. Dinners became quiet. My mother would smile too much, as if trying to make up for the silence. After our first child was born, they were overjoyed. My father called every week, asking for pictures, asking what the baby liked, what he said, what he ate. But I was always tired, always busy. I'd say, "I'll send them later, Dad." Sometimes I did. Most times, I forgot. Months went by, then years. The last time all of us, my parents, my wife, my child, and I, sat at the same table was nearly 5 years before that day I came home. I remember it now as if it were a dream. The light was soft, golden. My father poured tea for everyone, his hands trembling slightly. My mother kept refilling our plates even when we said we were full. And when we left that night, she stood at the gate, waving until our car turned the corner. She always did that. But that time she called out softly, "Don't forget to come back soon, okay?" And I said, "Of course, Ma. You know I will, only now do, I realize. Promises mean nothing without time to keep them." Life in the city kept moving. New job, promotions, bills, school events for my son, and somewhere between all that, my parents became voices on the phone, fading, polite, and never wanting to bother me. When I look back, I see the pattern clearly. They never complained. They just adjusted. Each time I pulled away, they learned to stand a little farther from me, still smiling, still proud, but quieter. And by the time I noticed the silence, it had already grown too deep to fill. Years went by faster than I expected. One season melted into another, and the years blurred into the background noise of my busy life. I told myself that's what adulthood was: responsibility, movement, survival. But in chasing all that, I slowly forgot the people who built the ground I was standing on. I remember one evening, I was sitting in traffic, scrolling through my phone when my mother called. It was her birthday, though I hadn't realized it until I saw her name flash on the screen. Her voice was gentle. "Son, how are you?" "You must be busy," I said. "Yeah, Ma. It's been a crazy week. Just heading home." She paused for a moment. "That's all right. I just wanted to hear your voice." There was something in her tone, soft, but a little heavier than usual. Before I could ask, she said, "Your father fixed the radio today. It plays your favorite song again," and then she laughed quietly. "He says he keeps it on just in case you drop by." I smiled, but I didn't know what to say. I told her I'd visit soon, and I meant it. At least for a few minutes I did, but I didn't go. My father's handwriting started showing up less often in the mail. He used to send small letters, usually folded inside brown envelopes. Nothing big, just updates, small stories, and sometimes a photo of the garden. One letter said, "Your mother planted roses again this year. She says they remind her of you." Another said, "We miss the noise you used to bring into the house." That one hurt, because I knew exactly what he meant. The next time he called, his voice sounded tired. He said his knees had been hurting. I told him, "You should go see a doctor," he said. "It's fine, son. It's just old age." Nothing new. And then, quietly, "Your mother and I were thinking of visiting you next month. If that's okay?" I froze for a moment. I didn't know what to say. My apartment was small. My wife was already stressed with work. I said, "Maybe not this month, Dad. Things are a bit crazy right now, but soon, okay?" He said, "Of course." "We understand." He said it so easily that I almost believed he didn't mind. But after that, he never asked again. A few months later, my cousin got married. The whole family was there. Laughter, food, noise, music. I didn't even think about my parents until someone asked, "Hey, why didn't Uncle and Auntie come?" I said they didn't want to travel that far anymore. But the truth was, I hadn't told them. The next morning, my mother called. Her voice was cheerful, but I could hear the ache beneath it. We saw the wedding pictures on Facebook. Everyone looked so happy I swallowed hard. "Oh, you saw those?" "Yeah, it was nice," she said. "You looked handsome. Your son's grown so tall." Then after a pause, "I would have loved to see him dance in person." I didn't know what to say. I changed the subject. That was the beginning of the real distance, not just miles, silence. Conversations turned shorter, their stories got smaller, and I started to hear less from them until weeks would pass with no word. Sometimes I'd think of calling, but there was always something. A meeting, a deadline, a headache, a reason that felt real in the moment. And slowly my parents' world shrank. Their friends moved away, neighbors stopped visiting. Even the garden that once bloomed with color began to fade. I didn't know that my mother had stopped planting flowers that year, or that my father's hands shook too much to fix the radio anymore. I didn't know because I never asked. One night, my father called. It was already late, and I almost didn't answer. He said, "Son, your mother's been feeling a bit weak lately." Nothing serious. I asked if she'd seen a doctor. He said, "She doesn't like hospitals, you know that." Then there was a pause. "Don't worry. I'm taking care of her." I said, "Okay, Dad. Just keep me updated, all right?" He said, "Of course." I didn't ask how bad it was. I didn't drive down that weekend. I just went back to my emails. That's how distance works. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't shout or break. It fades softly, quietly, until one day you look up and realize there's nothing left to say. I wish I could tell you that I noticed in time that something inside me woke up, but the truth is, I didn't. It took something irreversible for me to finally stop. That phone call, the one that changes everything, came on an ordinary morning. I almost didn't answer it, but when I did, my world went still. It was a Thursday morning. I remember because I had a presentation at work. I woke up early, half dressed in a rush, my mind already filled with charts and numbers. The phone buzzed twice before I noticed. It was my father's number. I stared at it for a second. He didn't usually call at that hour. For a moment, I thought, I'll call him back after the meeting. But something, maybe guilt, maybe instinct, made me answer. "Hello, Dad." There was a pause, a breath. Then, in a voice that sounded smaller than I'd ever heard, he said, "Your mother's gone." The words didn't land at first. It felt like hearing someone else's story, like it couldn't be real. What do you mean?" I said. He didn't answer right away. Then softly he said, "She passed away this morning." Peacefully. She didn't wake up. I remember sitting down without realizing it. The room felt like it was spinning. The city noise outside kept going as if nothing had changed. But inside me, everything stopped. He said, "I didn't want to call too early." "I know you're busy." That broke me. Busy. That's all he knew of me now, and that I was always busy. I said I'd be there as soon as I could. He just said, "Take your time, son. She'll wait for you." Even in grief, he spoke with gentleness, but she couldn't wait anymore. The drive home felt endless. Every mile hurt. Every billboard, every roadside tree, they all looked like pieces of a life I'd ignored. I kept thinking of her voice, how she used to hum while cooking, how she'd say, "Drive safe, son. Call me when you get there." And now, she was gone. No warning, no last goodbye. I reached home late in the evening. The lights in the house were dim. The curtains were drawn. My father sat on the old wooden chair, his shoulders slumped, his eyes empty. When he saw me, he stood up slowly. He didn't cry. He just said, "You're here." And then he hugged me. It was the first time in years we'd held each other like that. His body felt frail, trembling. I could feel every bone, every heartbeat. "I'm sorry, Dad," I whispered. He didn't answer. He just kept his arms around me. Later that night, I walked into their room. Her things were still there, her glasses on the nightstand, a half-finished sweater, a cup of tea gone cold. There was a framed photo beside the bed. Me, my wife, my son, smiling at some vacation spot. A thin layer of dust covered it. She must have cleaned it often, until she couldn't anymore. I sat on her side of the bed and looked around. Everything smelled faintly of her. Soap, flowers, time. That's when it hit me. All the moments I'd promised to come back, all the calls I'd delayed, all the birthdays I'd forgotten, they were gone. They would never come again. I thought of her words, "Our world is right here," and I realized I had left her world empty. That night, the house felt colder than I remembered. I walked through each room, the kitchen, the living room, the hallway, touching things like they were fragile memories. Everywhere I turned, there was something of her. A teacup, a shawl, an old note on the fridge. I found a small box on the shelf. Inside were letters, unopened, all addressed to me. Some were birthday cards, some were short notes. Just thinking of you. Hope you're eating well. Your father misses your laugh. The last one was written just a few weeks ago. It said, "We're proud of you, son. Don't worry about us. We're doing fine. Just take care of yourself." Even as her health faded, she was still trying to make sure I didn't feel guilty. Still giving. Still loving. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring into the dark, realizing how far I'd let her drift. Not because I didn't love her, but because I thought I had more time. We always think we have more time. That was the day my father stopped smiling. He moved slower, spoke less, and though I stayed for a few days, I could feel the space between us, heavy, filled with things we both wished we'd said earlier. When I left, he walked me to the gate, just like she used to. He said, "Drive safe, son." And I could hear her voice inside his. He didn't wave. He just watched me go. That image still haunts me. After my mother's funeral, I promised myself I would visit more often, and for a little while, I did. Every few months, I'd drive down, help my father with small things, fix a leaky pipe, trim the hedge, cook dinner together. But the rhythm didn't last. Life in the city always pulled me back. 1 month became 3, then 6. Phone calls again replaced visits. He never complained. He'd just say, "I'm glad you called, son," even if it was for 2 minutes. Sometimes he'd tell me stories about the old days, how he met my mother at a harvest fair, how she used to laugh so loudly that neighbors would peek through the window. He spoke of her as though she were still sitting beside him. I'd listen for a while, then gently steer the talk toward something else, afraid of the ache in his voice. One evening, he said, "I still talk to her sometimes." I asked, "What do you say?" He smiled faintly through the phone. "I tell her you're doing well." I didn't know what to say. After that, I just stared at the wall, wishing I could step through the years and undo everything. It happened again. A call, early in the morning. This time it was my cousin. Her voice was soft. "Your dad's been in the hospital. You should come." By the time I reached town, it was evening. The sky was gray, the air thick with the smell of rain and disinfectant. He was lying there, eyes half closed, his breathing shallow but calm. When he saw me, he tried to smile. He whispered, "You made it." I took his hand. It felt cold, like paper. "I'm here, Dad," I said. He nodded slightly. "I know." "Your mother will be glad I wanted to tell him everything. How sorry I was, how I wished I had stayed closer, how I finally understood what they had tried to teach me, but words felt too small for what was inside me. So I just held his hand until his breathing grew softer. When the machines went quiet, the nurse touched my shoulder. He was gone. After the funeral, I stayed in the house for days. The silence was heavier than before. No footsteps, no humming, no kettle whistling in the kitchen. I wandered from room to room, touching the walls, the tables, the things they'd left behind. On my father's desk was a small notebook. Inside were his careful handwriting and small notes, grocery lists, repair reminders, and at the back, a page that said, "Call our son next week. Don't forget to ask about his health." Even in his last months, he had been the one remembering me. I sat there for hours, the weight of every forgotten call pressing on my chest. The next day, I went to the garden. The soil was rough, overgrown. I knelt and pulled away the weeds until I found a small patch of earth where a few thin stems had survived, roses, weak but alive. I dug my hands into the soil and began to clear it. I planted new seeds, watered them, and whispered, "These are for you, Ma." For both of you, I stayed there until sunset, the light turning everything gold. And in that moment, for the first time in years, I felt something lift, not forgiveness, not peace, but maybe the beginning of both. Years have passed since then. The house is still standing, though time has softened its colors. I visit often now. I talk to them, out loud, like they're still sitting beside me. Sometimes I bring my son. He's old enough to ask questions now. "Dad, what was Grandma like?" And I tell him everything, how she laughed, how she cared, how she waited by the window. I tell him about my father's quiet strength, his patience, his kindness. I tell him the truth, that I wasn't always there, that I made mistakes. And I tell him why it matters to remember. Because love, I've learned, isn't about grand gestures or gifts. It's about showing up. It's about being there when it counts, even when it's inconvenient, even when you're tired. Love needs presence. Every time I leave the house now, I stop at the gate. I look back, just as they once did, and I whisper, "I'm here now. I didn't forget." The wind always seems to move through the trees when I say that, as if answering back. The roses bloom every spring, and when they do, I like to think it's their way of forgiving me, a quiet reminder that love never really leaves. It just waits for us to come home. Don't wait for someday to tell your parents you love them. Someday isn't a day on any calendar. It's a promise we keep alive only by being there today.